In the Gaza Strip, a devastating humanitarian crisis is unfolding. Tens of thousands have been killed and the vast majority of infrastructure has been leveled. This isn't a distant problem. It's a full-blown catastrophe, one that has led to the first officially declared famine in the Middle East by the world's leading authority on food security. In this video, we're breaking down the current situation, the staggering humanitarian toll, the specific conditions that triggered the Declaration of Famine, and the international community's response to a crisis that just keeps escalating. To really understand what's happening in Gaza, we need to look at a few connected areas. First, there's the sheer scale of human suffering and destruction. Then, there's the famine itself, what that declaration actually means, how it happened, and the horrific impact it's having, especially on the most vulnerable. Finally, we'll look at the international response, the political gridlock, and the diplomatic efforts that are struggling to make a difference. It's a complex situation with decades of history, but our focus today is on the immediate, catastrophic reality for the people on the ground. The numbers coming out of Gaza are staggering. Since the conflict intensified in October 2023, the Ministry of Health in Gaza reports that at least 61,722 Palestinians have been killed, and over 154,525 have been injured as of mid-August 2025. These figures include thousands of women and children. The UN Human Rights Office has documented numerous attacks on residential buildings, shelters, and even tents for the displaced, attacks that have wiped out entire families at once. The destruction of infrastructure is almost total. The United Nations and other humanitarian reports estimate that at least 70% of Gaza's infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed. This includes homes, schools, and hospitals. UN officials have described the systematic destruction of Gaza City as being underway, warning that these actions may not be required by military necessity and could be a grave breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention. All this destruction has led to a massive displacement crisis. The majority of Gaza's population has been forced to flee multiple times, moving from one area to another in a desperate search for safety. Many have had to relocate 3, 4, or even 7 or more times, often losing what little they have left with each move. They are frequently directed to so-called safe zones like Al-Mawasi, only for those areas to be struck as well, leaving them with nowhere safe to go. This crisis extends to the very systems that sustain life. The healthcare system has all but collapsed. The World Health Organization has documented hundreds of attacks on healthcare facilities since October 2023. The few hospitals still partially functioning are completely overwhelmed, lacking basic medical supplies, fuel, and staff. International medical groups are trying to set up field hospitals, but they can't possibly handle the scale of injuries and disease. Schools, which once served as shelters, have also been repeatedly hit. An UNRWA school in Zaytun was directly struck in August 2025, just one example in a pattern of attacks on civilian infrastructure that has defined this conflict. The social fabric of Gaza is being torn apart, one building and one life at a time. In August 2025, the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, the global authority on food security, made a grim announcement. Famine is present in the Gaza Governorate. This isn't just a warning, it's a confirmation of the worst-case scenario. It's the first time the IPC has ever officially declared a famine in the Middle East. A famine declaration isn't made lightly. It's a technical classification with a precise, horrifying definition. It means at least 20% of households are facing an extreme lack of food. At least 30% of children suffer from acute malnutrition. And at least 2 out of every 10,000 people are dying daily from starvation, or a combination of malnutrition and disease. The IPC report confirms that these thresholds have been met and exceeded in parts of Gaza. More than 500,000 people are facing catastrophe-level food insecurity, and there are projections that famine conditions will spread to other areas like Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis. UN officials have been blunt, calling this a man-made disaster. The famine isn't from a natural event like a drought. It's a direct result of the conflict and the severe restrictions on humanitarian aid. For months, UN agencies have warned that the trickle of aid allowed into Gaza is nowhere near enough. Border crossings have been closed or heavily restricted, and aid convoys that manage to get in face incredible dangers, including attacks. People have been killed simply trying to access food at distribution points. The impact on children is catastrophic. The WHO reports that malnutrition among children is accelerating at a terrifying pace. In July 2025 alone, over 12,000 children were identified as acutely malnourished. As of August 2025, a total of 269 malnutrition-related deaths have been documented, including 112 children. The use of starvation as a method of warfare is a war crime, and UN officials have warned that the deaths from this man-made famine may amount to exactly that. So, what is the world doing about this? The international response has been filled with widespread condemnation and urgent appeals, but it has had little real impact on the ground. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, has called the famine a moral indictment and a failure of humanity itself, demanding an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded aid. His calls have been echoed by nearly every major humanitarian organization, including the WHO, the World Food Programme, and the Red Cross. Diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire have been ongoing. Countries like the United States, Egypt, and Qatar have been mediating talks between Israel and Hamas. A recent proposal included a phased release of hostages for Palestinian prisoners during a 60-day ceasefire. But these talks have repeatedly stalled, with both sides unable to agree on terms for a permanent end to the fighting. Israel has stated its operations must continue until Hamas is dismantled, while Hamas demands a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces and an end to the blockade. Many countries have condemned the humanitarian situation, but this hasn't led to decisive action that changes the course of the conflict. Some humanitarian groups are now calling for stronger measures, like ending all arms sales to Israel and imposing sanctions on key officials. Meanwhile, the aid delivery system itself is broken. Aid agencies report that the system for civilian distribution has been dismantled, adding to the chaos and starvation. Humanitarian workers operate at immense personal risk. Since the conflict began, nearly 360 UNRWA staff members have been killed, part of a record number of aid worker deaths globally. While Israel has stated it is facilitating aid, UN officials on the ground report systematic obstruction. The result is a tragic paradox. Life-saving supplies often stack up at the borders, just miles from a population that is starving. The situation in Gaza is a catastrophe of historic proportions. A civilian population has been subjected to immense casualties, the near total destruction of their homes, and now, the confirmation of a man-made famine. Despite global calls for peace and aid, the international community has so far failed to stop the violence or meaningfully ease the suffering. The crisis is defined by a devastating humanitarian toll, a famine created by conflict and blockade, and an international response that hasn't been able to break the deadlock. The path forward is uncertain. Without an immediate ceasefire and a massive, unimpeded humanitarian operation, the death toll from violence, starvation, and disease will only continue to climb. The question now is whether the world will move from condemnation to decisive action before it's too late for countless more lives. For more in-depth analysis on critical global issues, subscribe to our channel and share this video to help spread awareness. And once again, thanks for watching.